They didn't fire me in a meeting. They erased me, one login at a time. My calendar vanished, access denied, then silence. I gave them 10 years, built their most profitable system, stayed through birthdays, funerals, storms. They thought I'd beg to come back. But they forgot one thing. I never leave a door open I don't know how to lock behind me. So, when the investors called me the next day, asking what I knew, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, but because they gave me the perfect stage to tell the truth. And the truth burns louder than any exit. My name was never on the launch slides. Not once. I built the firewall that saved the company from a multi-million-dollar breach 2 winters ago. Patched the 0-day vulnerability before anyone even noticed it was there. Still, I was the guy behind the curtain, the ghost in the server room. Liam, we need this fixed, quietly, they always said. And I did. No noise, no credit. That night, I was in the office alone. Again. It was 2:17 a.m. The system log showed an unusual spike in traffic from a port we hadn't used in 2 years. Someone had slipped into a deprecated gateway. Someone smart. Smart enough to erase their trail. But I was smarter. I killed the connection, rewrote the access log, and sealed the breach within 12 minutes. 12 minutes that could have cost the company everything. No one knew. No one ever would. I got home to find the living room dark. My daughter's drawing lay on the kitchen table. A stick figure superhero with a laptop standing in front of a building labeled Daddy's office. The cape was colored in with glitter pen. In the corner, she'd written, "My dad is the invisible hero." I stood there for a long time. "Don't wake her," my wife said from the hallway. She waited, but her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish. I was always too late. She walked away. I didn't follow. The next morning, I logged in and saw an unusual calendar entry, an invitation-only meeting titled Strategic Workforce Realignment. No details, no context, just a location. Executive Conference Room B, and a sender, Charles Myers, CEO. My stomach dropped. In the early days, Charles used to come to me for everything. Back when the company was bleeding cash, we'd stayed up together, fixing broken code and crashing modules. I trusted him. Hell, I believed in him. Make this AI work. He'd said a month ago, slapping a thick binder onto my desk. You'll get your own team, and a VP title. The AI was ambitious. Too ambitious. A behavioral risk engine that could predict if employees were about to breach protocol or leak confidential data. But it needed clean architecture, bias filtering, compliance logic. I rewrote its core logic from scratch, gave it a heartbeat, and like always, I did it alone. The week of my daughter's birthday, Charles called at midnight. There's a stakeholder review in the morning. We need the final build. I looked at the half-wrapped present on the table. The card she'd written already folded with glitter glue. You promised, my wife said. Not angrily, just tired. I know, I whispered, grabbing my laptop. At 9:32 a.m., the next day, the AI passed all benchmarks. Accuracy, 94.7%. Response time, 0.3 seconds. Flagged insider threats before they occurred. I emailed Charles the final report, sat back, and exhaled for the first time in days. 2 hours later, a junior analyst, Mark, was assigned to my team. No explanation, no heads up. Just a terse Slack message from HR. Mark will now assist with integration oversight. I'd mentored Mark last year. Good kid, eager. But this wasn't an assistant role. It was something else. I could feel it in my teeth. I brushed it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. That night, my daughter fell asleep in my arms while I whispered the story she loved about the dragon who was invisible to the world but still saved the village. The morning after, while pulling up documentation for the AI audit, I noticed a new folder on the shared drive, Alpha Risk Legal IP. I clicked in. There it was, the architecture I'd built, the white paper I'd drafted, the core logic document I'd stayed up rewriting after my daughter's recital. And my name, nowhere. No author tag, no creation credit, nothing. Instead, it listed Team Lead M. Holloway. Mark. The air left my lungs like I'd been punched in the chest. I sat there staring at the screen, not even blinking. My hands cold despite the room being warm. They'd buried me again. Only this time, they'd brought a shovel. The next morning, I couldn't log into the dashboard. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Servers timed out all the time. But when the third failed login returned a message that read, "Access revoked. Contact system administrator." Something twisted in my gut. I messaged IT. No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. My keycard still worked, though. I walked through the office, past the glass fish bowls filled with managers pretending to be busy, past the mural that read "Innovation Through Integrity." Charles was standing near the espresso machine. He didn't make eye contact. He stirred his coffee, then walked the other way. Something was wrong. At 11:03 a.m., I was summoned to HR, a sterile white room with a fern dying in the corner and two chairs too close together. Across from me sat Natalie from compliance, clipboard in hand, smile tight enough to snap. "We've detected irregularities in your system access patterns," she said. "Specifically, deviations in log behavior tied to our Alpha Risk framework." "What kind of deviations?" "Midnight logins, non-standard queries, code access outside of scheduled cycles." I almost laughed. "You mean the patches I made? The ones that kept the AI from flagging half the company as potential saboteurs?" She blinked. "That's not how it's documented." Of course it wasn't. The version of the logs they were using had been manipulated by the same engine I wrote to track manipulations. They'd used my own creation to erase me, to make it look like I'd abused access. Checkmate. Played with my own hand. I asked to see the raw logs. She refused. "That's above my clearance," she said, without looking up. As I stood to leave, Charles walked in, calm, as if he just wanted to say hello. He leaned against the wall, coffee in hand again. "You're burning bridges you might need, Liam," he said softly. I stared at him. The man I'd built a decade of trust with. The man who once said we were building something bigger than ourselves. And now, he stood there, sipping dark roast, watching me drown. "You're burning your own bridges," he repeated. "You sure you want to do that?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The next 2 days passed in silence. No emails, no meetings. My access never came back. No one said the word "fired," but I wasn't on the payroll anymore either. I wasn't escorted out. There was no final handshake, no cardboard box of belongings, just deletion. I opened my laptop at home, typed in my old credentials out of habit, and watched the message pop up again. Invalid user. Even my work email bounced. They'd erased me without leaving a bruise. So I went to the one place where I still existed, the school auditorium. My daughter's class was performing a short skit about stars. She was a nebula, a puffy cloud of purple and glitter. She didn't see me at first, but when the play ended and she scanned the crowd, her eyes met mine, and her smile nearly knocked the wind out of me. Afterward, she ran up and hugged me like it was the first time she'd seen me in years. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "I almost didn't," I said, "but I needed to see something real." And in that moment, I realized they hadn't taken everything. Not yet. That night, while deleting old files from my home server, I found something strange. A compressed folder labeled Alpha Risk Backup Nav Dev. I blinked. I didn't remember making that. Then I did. Weeks earlier, I'd run a dry simulation on the test server before the real deployment, just in case something failed. It had become a habit. Back up everything. Always. That test build included logs. Clean logs. My original code. My authorship metadata. Unaltered. Time-stamped. Traceable. It wasn't everything, but it was something. It was proof. The next morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. A voice, male, smooth, practiced, spoke. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I'm calling on behalf of a private equity group currently invested in your former employer." I didn't respond. "We've recently been made aware of discrepancies regarding the Alpha Risk product line," he continued. "Our team is curious about the actual authorship and development cycle behind the system." I said nothing. Then he added, "We'd like to meet the person who really built it." The investor's office wasn't in a tower. It was in a townhouse, tucked behind a bakery in Tribeca. No logos, no reception desk. Just a fingerprint scanner and a man in a dark wool coat who shook my hand like we'd known each other for years. He introduced himself only as Mason. We sat in a quiet room with brick walls and no windows, a single screen in the center mirrored to a tablet I held in my lap. I loaded the folder, my original code, timestamps, AI behavior maps. I showed Mason how the algorithms were rewritten, how the data filters had been twisted to inflate compliance scores, reduce risk markers, and overstate operational efficiency. He didn't interrupt, didn't even blink. When I finished, he leaned back. "We had suspicions," he said. "Our analysts flagged anomalies during the IPO, numbers that didn't match usage behavior, but we had no way to prove it." "Now you do," I said. Mason tilted his head. "Why come to us?" "I didn't," I replied. "You called me." He smiled. "You've built something they depend on," he said. "You understand it better than anyone. That means you can break it." I shook my head. "I didn't come here to destroy anything." "No," he said. "But you came here because someone destroyed you." That sat in the air for a long time. "If you had the chance to burn them down," Mason asked, "would you take it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The question pressed into my chest like a hand. 10 years of loyalty, of missing birthdays, of swallowing credit and nodding at shadows. What do you do when someone steals a decade of your life? Do you forgive? Or do you dismantle their house brick by brick? He leaned forward. "We'll fund you. Discreetly. No strings, but only if you're serious about exposing them." A pause. "If you want to be invisible again, that's your call. But if you want the world to know who built Alpha Risk, this is your window." I left with a silent agreement hanging between us. That night, I sat in the dark, watching my daughter sleep. Her sketchbook lay open beside her. Another superhero, this one with a name, the Fixer. And a speech bubble. Some heroes work in the dark. I didn't sleep. The next day, I made 2 calls. One to Rachel, a data engineer I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. The other to Kumar, a systems architect who vanished from the company one Friday with no explanation. Both had stories like mine. Both had scars, and both said yes. Within a week, we were in a co-working basement 5 blocks from where I used to work, sharing a whiteboard and a grudge. We called it Whitelock AI. The idea was simple: a transparent, auditable AI framework for internal risk assessments, one that couldn't be tampered with because every change triggered a notification to an independent oversight server. Real compliance, real accountability. We worked in silence. No press, no launch. Just code and cold coffee. But then came the message. Encrypted, no sender. Inside was a single file, a code snippet with my original logic, and a handwritten annotation. Charles knew. It referenced a memo dated 3 weeks before my access was revoked, detailing how Charles had personally ordered modifications to inflate risk accuracy for IPO presentations. His digital signature was embedded. Whoever sent it, they were inside, or had been. I forwarded the file to a secure storage cloud, then wiped the trace. It was the kind of evidence that didn't just prove fraud, it proved intent. We were sitting on a powder keg. At 10:47 that evening, Rachel showed me the news. The company had just announced a new funding round, $50 million from an international consortium with a glowing feature on Alpha Risk's projected scalability. Projected based on the system I built, based on falsified numbers. My name was still nowhere to be found. But now, the stakes were bigger. If that round closed and the fraud wasn't exposed, the damage wouldn't just be reputational, it'd be regulatory, federal. And then it wouldn't be just me they erased. It'd be the truth itself. The first glitch showed up in a financial firm in Chicago. Their internal audit system flagged all employees in the same department as potential data leak threats. 24 people. No prior incidents. No triggers. Just red flags popping like fireworks. By noon, 3 other clients reported similar anomalies. The system I built, modified beyond recognition, was imploding under its own lies. Risk markers flipped at random. Compliance dashboards contradicted each other. Managers froze hiring because they didn't trust the outputs. Within 72 hours, over a dozen enterprise clients experienced false positives that disrupted operations. One firm halted a major merger. Another launched an internal investigation that led to 3 wrongful terminations. Total estimated damage, $9 million. And climbing. We watched it unfold in silence. Our co-working basement lit by screens filled with chaos we hadn't caused, but could predict. They broke the logic engine, Kumar said, eyes bloodshot. The prioritization hierarchy's corrupted. It's trying to cross-validate incomplete profiles. Rachel nodded. It's like using a cracked compass to fly a plane. Eventually, you hit something. That something arrived in the form of a Reddit live stream. A junior system admin, his face hidden behind a mask, broadcasted a live walkthrough of the Alpha Risk dashboard in real time. "Watch this," he said, pointing to the screen. "This employee here has 0 risk indicators, but the AI flags him for termination." He clicked to show the logs. "Now watch again. Same profile, different time, now flagged as compliant." Thousands of viewers flooded the stream. It went viral within the hour. And then came the hammer. The SEC issued a statement. "We are opening a formal inquiry into possible fraudulent misrepresentation of AI functionality during a public offering." Within hours, Charles was summoned. I saw his photo on the news. Same press suit, same smug expression. But this time, his eyes looked tired. There was a tremor in the corner of his mouth. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. That night, I got the call. Blocked number, same voice. "Liam," Charles said, "I need to see you." He didn't ask. He ordered it, like he used to, when we were building things instead of burning them. We met at a private lounge. His choice, not mine. The kind with velvet walls and $40 cocktails. He looked thinner, as if the suit was now wearing him. "I'll keep it simple," he said. "If you come forward and confirm the system performed as designed, we'll cut you in." I stared at him. "You mean lie?" He didn't flinch. "We give you your credit. Equity in the next phase, we both walk away with more than we lost. And if I don't," his voice dropped, "then we both go down." It should have been an easy answer, but it wasn't. I thought of the years, of the nights fixing bugs no one saw, of my daughter's drawings, of the team we'd quietly built, Whitelock AI, still unknown to the world. I also thought of the people on that dashboard, employees falsely labeled as threats, careers ruined by corrupted logic. Charles leaned forward. "This is your redemption arc, Liam. You're not a villain, but you could be the hero who chose not to throw the match." My hands were on the table, calm, still. "I didn't come here for a cut," I said. "I came to end the lie." He exhaled, smiled faintly. I figured. I stood to leave. "I hope you know," he said quietly. "You're burning a forest you helped plant." I paused at the door. "Maybe," I said, "but if the roots are rotten, the forest was dead anyway." Back at the basement office, I opened a private terminal. A shell script blinked at me. "Whitelock AI. Project Phoenix. Initiate?" Rachel looked at me. "Are you sure? This is the big red button." "It'll trigger the recursive audit," Kumar said. "System-wide scan. Everything exposed. No way to stop it once it starts." I hovered my finger above the enter key. "I'm not after revenge," I said. "I just want the truth to exist somewhere other than in my head." I hit enter. The server lit up. Green text on black. AI crawlers swarming through buried logs, decrypted threads, access trails buried beneath months of obfuscation. For 5 minutes, the office was silent, except for the hum of the fans. Then my phone buzzed. An anonymous message. "It's working, but you didn't warn them all." My stomach turned. Rachel's voice cut through the tension. "Liam, look at this." On screen were names we hadn't seen before. Mid-level staff, whistleblowers, people who tried to stop the fraud from the inside and got silenced. Our AI had pulled them into the blast zone. "Some of these people," she whispered, "they're not guilty. They were trying to help." The recursive audit didn't distinguish intent. It only found patterns. And now, those patterns were going public. We were about to tell the truth, but it was going to cost more than we planned. The collapse wasn't loud. It was slow, heavy, like watching a glacier crack, then split wide into the sea. Within a week, the company's stock lost nearly 60% of its value. Major clients issued public statements terminating their contracts. 2 partners sued for breach of compliance. The IPO was under formal review, pending criminal investigation. The headlines didn't say my name, but I could read myself between every line. AI firm implodes under audit scandal. Investors seek accountability in fraudulent system. For the first time in years, I breathed fully, until she showed up. I found her waiting outside our co-working space, coat pulled tight, holding a small folder. Her eyes flicked up as I approached. "Hey, Liam." It was Claire, the analyst who replaced me, the one who smiled during my exit and said nothing. "I know how this looks," she said quickly, "but I wasn't part of it." I didn't speak. I wasn't ready. I sent you something. Weeks ago. Encrypted. The annotation that said Charles knew. That was me. I froze. You? She nodded. I was scared, but I couldn't stay silent. I studied her, searching for gaps in the mask. But she didn't flinch. I want to join Whitelock, she said. I want to build something that doesn't lie. Rachel and Kumar were skeptical. I didn't blame them. Even I wasn't sure. That night, I sat at the edge of my daughter's bed while she flipped through a picture book. She stopped at a page showing a tall building. Is that your old office? She asked. It used to be. She tilted her head. If they didn't fire you, would you have started this company? The question pierced deeper than I expected. No, I said finally. I probably wouldn't have. She didn't say anything, just nodded, as if that made sense to her, as if she knew all along that something broken had to fall before something better could rise. The next morning, I offered Claire a trial run. Nothing official. Just space, a terminal, and access to a sandbox server. She accepted with quiet determination. And she worked like someone making penance. A few days later, I received a formal letter from the U.S. Office of Data Ethics. They wanted me to serve on an advisory committee, helping draft national guidelines for AI accountability and transparency. Not as a whistleblower, not even as a founder, but as an architect of a new standard. I didn't say yes, not right away. I took a long walk first, past the ruins of what I'd helped build, past the glossy banners still clinging to windows, peeling at the edges. That same evening, I received a subpoena request, testimony in the federal investigation into Alpha Risk. The hearing was quiet, no cameras, no press. Charles sat on the far end of the table, shoulders slouched, eyes sunken. He didn't speak until I passed him leaving the room. You win, he murmured. I didn't stop walking. The next day, I got a package. No return address, just a small, worn envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. You were always the better man. That kills me more than any of this ever will. See. I folded the paper once, then twice, and slid it into my drawer. We didn't speak again. Whitelock grew faster than any of us expected. We weren't flashy. We didn't chase press. But our client list expanded weekly, and our dashboard was beginning to be cited as a reference standard in compliance audits. People started listening. One afternoon, I found Rachel staring at the team board, half smiling. You realize this isn't revenge anymore, right? She said. It never was, I replied. It just started that way. The following week, a journalist sent me a message. Embedded in the email was a confidential leak. A global software firm, twice the size of Alpha Risk, was running an internal AI system built suspiciously similar to our old code. Same structure, same outputs, same vulnerabilities. They'd learned nothing, or worse, they'd copied everything. The subject line on the email read, "Would you like to comment?" I didn't reply right away. Instead, I turned back to the whiteboard where Claire was outlining a new subroutine for human oversight protocols. We had more work to do. The interview requests didn't stop. They came from tech magazines, ethics panels, podcasts with millions of listeners. Everyone wanted a quote, a headline, a soundbite that could turn years of silence into a shareable link. I turned them all down. When asked why, I said, I did what was right. That's enough. And it was. For me. But not for the world. I wasn't trying to become a symbol. I wasn't trying to become anything, really. Just a man who saw a fire and decided not to look away. But fires leave light. and shadows. One morning, while waiting outside my daughter's school, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. It was a video clip, a panel discussion at a global ethics summit. The moderator cited Whitelock as the first enforceable framework for transparent internal AI governance. They called it the Carter Standard. I didn't respond, just watched the screen fade to black. Later that week, I visited my mother in hospice care. She was thinner now, her voice softer than I remembered. The machines around her hummed like they had something to say, but didn't know how. "You look tired," she said. "Good tired," I replied. She smiled. "You know, your father. He went through something like this. Different time, but the same weight." I looked up. "He worked in aerospace," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Found out his boss was falsifying safety reports. Planes were being cleared too fast. He wanted to speak up. He really did." "Why didn't he?" She took a long breath. "He was scared. Not for himself. For us. You were just born. He thought if he stayed quiet, he could keep the house, the job, the insurance. He died regretting it." Her hand found mine. "You broke the pattern," she said. "You chose the fire." I held her hand until she fell asleep. That night, I lay awake thinking about silence. How it's so often mistaken for safety. How it buries more truth than any lie ever could. The next morning, I founded a nonprofit. We called it the Outliers Fund. Its mission was simple: protect and empower employees who had been quietly eliminated for doing the right thing. Engineers, analysts, whistleblowers without a stage. We gave them legal resources, emotional support, and, when needed, a bridge to something better. Within 6 months, the fund had partnered with over a dozen companies committed to ethical reform. Whitelock AI kept growing, but never faster than our principles. One afternoon, Rachel walked in, holding an envelope. "Fan mail," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a handwritten note on wide-ruled notebook paper. It read, "Dear Mr. Carter, my dad says he got fired for being honest. He cried a lot and I didn't know what to do. Then he read about you. Now he's building something new. He says you showed him how. So I wanted to say, thank you. Emily, age 9. I read the letter twice, then a third time. It hit harder than any headline ever could. The next day, I agreed to one interview. Just one. A local podcast run by a former engineer turned journalist. No studio lights, no makeup, just a conversation. Halfway through, he asked, "Do you think people have forgotten what they did to you?" I paused. Then I smiled. Genuinely, not the practiced smile I'd worn in boardrooms. "They forgot me," I said, "but I didn't forget them." He leaned forward. "And if you could go back, would you do it all again?" I looked past the camera, as if the answer was written on the wall behind him. "I'd do it sooner." That clip went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was real, and maybe because people were starting to understand something they hadn't before. That some legacies aren't built in spotlight. They're forged in silence, in the shadows, and they live longer because of it. 2 months later, I stood at the back of a crowded auditorium while my daughter presented her science fair project. She built a tiny AI model that tracked how plants respond to sunlight. Her display title? Transparency Makes Things Grow. I didn't cry. Not then. Later that night, I found a message from a tech policy director in Europe. They wanted to implement a Whitelock-inspired framework as a baseline for cross-border data ethics. Another ripple. Another small proof that the stone I threw into the pond hadn't sunk quietly. Before shutting down for the night, I scrolled through our dashboard. A new application had just come through the Outliers Fund. Name, withheld field, education tech. Reason, reported a senior team member for suppressing bias detection algorithm data. Was reassigned, then terminated. I approved it instantly. Then, as the room fell quiet and the hum of the servers slowed to a steady pulse, I opened my laptop camera. I looked at myself. Older now, grayer, but more whole than I'd ever been. And I hit record. They erased me once, I began, but the truth doesn't stay deleted.